Alright, what's going on, guys? It is your boy TKD. Wanted to hear back in Blazing Swords, and we did get a tiny little teaser look in this full, collage type of things that will be coming to HBO Max. We did get a little hint here at The Last of Us HBO series coming in 2023. We did get confirmation about that it will be coming out in 2023, early 2023, but we did get about a 20-second look at the HBO Last of Us teaser. Down below, I will link the full type of HBO Max collage, what's coming to the service in the future. However, we will play right here just the raw 30 seconds of the Last of Us HBO teaser included in that full collage.
Everybody I have cared for has either died or left me.
You have no idea what loss is.
Now, yeah, that might be a little small tease, what I'm saying? There's some good stuff in there I love, things that I gotta just point out here just right off the bat. Pedro Pascal as Joel, at least from a vocal standpoint, sounds incredibly identical to the Joel we have in the Troy Baker performance and everything. Really was impressed by that. But there is actually a lot more than you might think that is in this 20-30 second teaser that we have to break down here for this breakdown. But before we get to that, if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like on the video, as well as subscribe to PlayStation Store to keep up with the latest and greatest in PlayStation. First off here, we have to cover, of course, the narration. It is derived from my favorite cutscene in The Last of Us and in video games as a whole, which is, quote, "Everybody I've cared for has either died or left me." That is what Ellie says, and then Joel continues on saying, "You have no idea what loss is." And so those lines are actually flipped in the original cut in the game itself for Last of Us, and I am sure that they will play a very similar type of cadence when the actual show comes out. I'm sure it will mimic the game when the full scene airs on HBO, but take a look at the actual in-game cutscene version of these lines here right now.
Not her,
What?
Maria told me about Sarah.
Ellie?
And
You are treading on some mighty thin ice here.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel, but I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you.
We'll have a lot more to say on this narration when we see Joel in this actual scene later on in this teaser, but shout out to the narration. Definitely do love these lines here. Next up here, we have a scene that is in the beginning of this whole teaser. That is the winter scene. And so I love that we get a cool opening shot of Joel and Ellie's backpacks that mirrors the perspective of that third person view that we see these backpacks in during the Last of Us game. So really cool to see that little thing there. Maybe not intentional, but really cool thing I just point out there as well. But they're walking across this snowy bridge that is definitely not in the game. So my best guess here is that maybe this is a scene not in the original game that takes place after Joel saves Ellie from David. I only say this because it's winter in the scene, and if you recall the game, Joel gets critically injured at the university during the fall season. That makes him unmovable until he goes and saves Ellie from David in the game itself that we get to play. So it couldn't be before the David section of the game itself, unless they're changing it, but I highly doubt that, right? Like, they haven't said that they're really going to change any of the events here, but they are going to just show different perspectives and different points of the original Last of Us story. So I think that this is definitely after the David scene, and they're on their way to the hospital, St. Mary's Hospital specifically. But what do you guys think down in the comments below? What are your thoughts on this scene? My bet is that it is an original scene that takes place after the winter season, after David's section in the game that we have not seen before in the game itself. So next up here, we have one of my favorite scenes that we got to break down here. That is the Ellie handgun scene, right? We see Ellie and Joel kneel down in this inside interior type of windowed off kind of space and everything that's covered with newspapers. Now this scene is interesting because it shows Joel teaching Ellie how to reload a handgun, which we could just take as a callback to not only Joel teaching Ellie how to shoot with the long gun that she was able to provide cover for Joel, but it could also be a callback to after that encounter when Ellie provides Joel cover, where Joel gives Ellie her own handgun that is something more her own size, right? That could definitely be the case here, and we can call the case closed, but I think I actually cracked the code on this whole scene here. In the top right hand corner of this scene, we see a newspaper in focus that says Kansas City. This is not a location in the original game, but we do have leaked set shots from the show that came out a few months ago by a Reddit user named Robotlu2 that indicated scenes in the HBO series would take place in Kansas City itself. This would be entirely original location, and it would make sense for Joel and Ellie to make a detour to Kansas City after they leave Pittsburgh on their way to Wyoming to Tommy's Dam. And so I think that's what they're going with here, that after Pittsburgh there is a point in time where they end up in Kansas City on their way to Wyoming before they ever meet Tommy. I think that's what we're going at here, where this scene in Kansas City could actually take place. That's just where I'm going with here based off what we have here on this shot. Granted, we don't have a lot to work with here. I could be entirely wrong, but what do you guys think in the comments below? Do you think that the Kansas City thing is just me, reading too much into it, or is this going to be a scene in The Last of Us HBO show that will fill in the gaps between Pittsburgh and Wyoming? This next scene shows Sarah, where we see Joel escaping with Sarah, played by Nico Parker, for the HBO show. What's cool is that they're running through what is, according to the red sign, to be a restaurant, because the top sign here says soups and sandwiches in the red neon sign. In the original game, Joel and Sarah actually do run through a restaurant, with the entrance being held back by Tommy himself in the original game. So maybe Tommy himself, played by Gabriel Luna, is in this exact scene as well. Maybe that's who Sarah is staring at, because she's worried for Tommy's safety, of course, and we'll have to see when the full HBO show comes out. And I also bet that given that this is going to be The Last of Us HBO show, I would definitely make the first episode be a direct just reflection of that first scene in The Last of Us, that whole section where we have Joel, Tommy, and Sarah escaping Austin. I think that'd be a great intro to the series, and definitely will set the tone for those that are new to The Last of Us. Next up here, as I said before, this is where we have the Joel bedroom scene, where we have the Joel and Ellie argument. This is exactly where the voiceover narration takes place in this scene itself, and it's really cool because we get a really good shot at Pedro Pascal as Joel in the bedroom scene with Ellie. It even has the same wall design. It looks great in this HBO show, and I cannot wait to see the full thing when the scene and the show drops on HBO. Next up here, we see Ellie looking at her Switchblade, which, for those that are unaware about the importance of this Switchblade, we learned through Marlene, another character in The Last of Us, that the Switchblade originally belonged to Anna, Ellie's mother. So considering that Marlene and Ellie's mom were friends before the outbreak, I am hoping that we get some more insight into Ellie's mom as well, and maybe some more backstory on this specific Switchblade that ended up in Ellie's possession through Marlene. And so there are castings, of course, that we know about, with Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson, those being the original Joel and Ellie in the games. They are going to be part of this show, but they will not be playing Joel and Ellie as we know beforehand. So I'm very curious to see if we have Ashley Johnson, who played Ellie in the games, actually play Anna, Ellie's mother, in the HBO series, and we get to see some more backstory with this Switchblade. That is definitely my hope. We'll have to see it when the show comes out. Next up, we have a scene here where Ellie is running and shooting behind her. This shot isn't in the original game as far as I'm aware, but considering the handgun she's holding and the outfit she's wearing, which the outfit is a little bit loosely because there's a lot of scenes where she's wearing the same outfit, so there is that. But maybe this is also a scene in the Kansas City section that we seem to be getting at here, where she has that handgun and that same outfit as well. That's maybe my guess, that maybe this is some sort of escape that she's having to do. They're in a rush or something like that. Something happened in Kansas City. That's probably my guess. Or this perhaps could be something in Left Behind territory that we don't know as well, which is a prequel DLC for The Last of Us that came out about a year after The Last of Us originally dropped. So we'll have to see when this whole thing comes out, but my guess, it could probably just be an extension of the Kansas section in this HBO series. Continuing on, we see Ellie adjusting a car mirror, which definitely has to be a callback to Ellie and Joel getting into Bill's truck and all that. Definitely cool to see that there. And maybe they drive this very truck, of course, to Kansas City. That would definitely make sense, and we'll see if that all pans out right there. But definitely cool to see that little truck scene there. Speaking of Bill's truck, we do see the man, the myth, the legend himself, Bill, in The Last of Us HBO series, played by Nick Offerman. Considering he's wearing a mask and a shotgun ammo strap, this is likely during the events of the outbreak, but his lawn and his house looks oddly clean, looks very, very put together, you know, not worn down or anything like that, not decayed like a lot of the environment that we see in the modern timeline during The Last of Us during gameplay after the 20-year jump. So I'm presuming that this may be during that 20-year gap that we know very little about in the games itself. And so with Murray Bartlett already casted to play Frank, which is Bill's significant other in The Last of Us universe, we could see you know, this whole thing where we have this flashback of Bill and Frank in the, you know, early stages of Bill's town, where he eventually will take over this town and sprinkle booby traps all over this town to protect it from the infected. And so we may see that, we may see frustrations with Frank, and we will see maybe how you know, Frank eventually ends up how he is in the original game, which is indeed dead. And so we'll see how that turns out. Maybe this will show that side of it. Very cool to see that there, that we'll be getting this whole perspective in The Last of Us. And last thing here to mention just really quickly here in this whole section is that the last thing that we get here is an infected looking wall here. We see a clicker that has grown into the wall that is connected from its CBI infection, growing over it and onto the wall, you know, behind it and everything. It looks so cool. It looks very, very realistic, very, very nice looking. And I can't wait to see how this show really does reflect the design of the infected as well, because that clicker looks really cool. I'm sure that clicker is also going to rip itself from the wall and go after Joel and Ellie. Very, very cool stuff there. But that is everything I found here from this short HBO teaser for The Last of Us. Down below, what are your thoughts? Did I miss something that you saw in this teaser? Did you interpret something different than what I interpreted in this video breakdown? Let me know all your thoughts down below in that comment section. And also, while you are down there, make sure to check out that description. You can find links to our Discord, our Twitter, and of course our Anchor link that you can listen to our long form content in podcast format. Those of course being Road to Part 1. We are just under 2 weeks away from the release of The Last of Us Part 1. You can get locked in and keep going on our Road to Part 1 podcast series that is dedicated to any and all things The Last of Us Part 1 remake for PlayStation 5. Glad to if you enjoyed it as well. Stay subscribed to PlayStation Source to keep up with the latest and greatest in PlayStation. Thank you all for watching, and as always, greatness awaits.